Alright guys, it's April 30th. I'm trying to get caught up on my videos. This is 9.4 volume of prisms and cylinders. Alright, when we talked about the volume, remember it's as if we were going to fill up this box with water, or if we were going to fill it up with sand. It's the volume. How much can we fit into the box, into the prism? Now, prism is a multi-sided three-dimensional figure. Okay, basically it's a polyhedron where two of the sides that we call bases are parallel and congruent. So if you look at this side right here as being our front face, okay, right here we call this the front face. Okay, well this could be the front face, and if you can see back here, we might call this one back here the back face. Well, for a prism, we could say these are the bases, the front and the back base. Remember, in geometry, base does not mean bottom all the time. All right? So we call this a rectangular prism because the base is a rectangle. And if we're going to use this front as the base, okay, we would say this is the length of the base, this would be the width of the base, and I always like to use this side right here as the height of my prism. And you'll see why maybe a little bit later on, but this is the height. Okay? So a prism is a multi-sided three-dimensional polyhedron. Okay? A polyhedron is basically just a three-dimensional figure with several flat faces. Okay? So a ball is not a polyhedron because it doesn't have flat faces. All right? Okay, so we have the front and the back face of this polyhedron are parallel and congruent, so we call this a prism. All right, you don't have to worry too much about the whole polyhedron thing or anything else. So how do we find the volume of a prism? Well, it is the base area times the height, or what I say, volume equals big B times H, where big B equals the base area. So if we can find excuse me, the area of this base and then multiply it times the height of the prism, we will have the volume of the prism. Okay? So what I'll be asking you to do is most times find the area of the base and then multiply it times the height. So let's see here. On this one, we know the length is 8 meters. We know the width is 5 meters. And the height of the prism is 2 meters. Now, we don't need to even really worry about the dimensions. Do they make sense at this point? So to find the base area, it is simply 8 times 5. So the base area is 40. Okay, and now to find the volume, we simply go base area times the height of the prism, and we end up with volume equals 80. And this is meters cubed because there's 3 dimensions, a length, a width, and a height. So it's 80 meters. Okay? All right. Now number 2 is basically the same problem, except it's what we call a work backwards problem. Here you'll notice we're given the length, the height, and the volume, but we have to find the width in this case. All right, so if we call this the length, the height, and this the width, we know the length is 10, we know the height is 4, and we're asked to find the width. This is what we don't have. So again, we take the volume equals big B, the base area, times the height. But I'm going to spell it out a little bit more. Remember, base area is length times width. So length times width times the height of the prism. Now I use this L because I don't want to get anything confused with a 1. So we were given the volume. We'll plug that in right there for V, 120, equals the length, which is 10, times the width times the height of 4. Now you'll remember from elementary math, when you multiply three things together, it doesn't matter if you multiply these two first and then that one, or these two and then this one. So we know we just have 120 equals 40W, which means we can divide both sides by 40, and we get W equals 3. So your width equals 3. Okay? Now you can tell probably by now what you pick for the length, the width, and the height, or what you pick for the bases isn't that important when you're talking about a rectangular prism, because you'll remember back probably from elementary school to find the volume of a, probably didn't even call it a prism in elementary school, they just said a cube or a rectangle. Like this, it's length times width times height. So rectangular prisms are pretty straightforward. But you're going to see right here in this triangular prism that it is pretty important that you decide what the base is. And in most of the problems we give you, the base is going to be right out front. And we call this a triangular prism because the base is a triangle. And we always name our prisms by the base. So this is a triangular prism. Down here, number 4 is a triangular prism. All right, I'm going to leave number 3 for you to do because number 4 is a little tougher, so I want to give you some help with that. All right, so it's a triangular prism, so we know our base is a triangle and it's right there. We know that it has a side length of 6 yards, 8 yards, and 10 yards, and the prism itself has a height of 14. All right, now we want to find the volume. So the first thing we have to do, remember, volume equals big B times H, and that's our big B right there. How do we find the area of that? Well, what you need to realize is big B in this case is a right triangle. How do I know? Because 2 times 3, 2 times 4, 2 times 5. This is a 3, 4, 5 right triangle where this is one of the legs and this is the other leg. So remember, to find the area of a triangle, in this case the base is a triangle, so to find the area it's 1/2 the base of the triangle times the height of the triangle. And this is where students get confused a lot. Here we're saying the base of the triangle, here we're saying the base of the prism. Big B is always the area of the base of the prism. In this case, when we use lowercase b's, we're talking about a base length. Okay? So let's find that big B, base area. It's 1/2 times 6 times 8. And 6 times 8 is 48, and half of 48 is 24. So the base area is 24. In this case, it's yards squared. So now to find the volume, we simply go volume equals big B, which we already found to be 24 yards squared, times the height of 14, and we end up with volume equals 24 times 14 is 336. And that is 336, and that is yards cubed. And the interesting thing is, remember, this was a base area, so that's yards squared, and this is just yards, so yard squared times yard. Yard to the second times yard to the first is yard to the third. Okay, moving on. All right. Now remember, to find the volume of this, the volume equals big B times height. Volume equals big B is basically 5 times x, or 5x, and the height is x. So volume equals 5x squared. They give you the volume. I'm going to leave it for you to finish. Okay. This is a work backwards problem. Remember, volume equals big B times H. But in this case, what is the edge length? That's what they want. So we call it very similar to number 5. All right, and now here we are on to cylinders. Okay? Cylinders, are not a prism, but we find the volume of a cylinder the same way we find the volume of a prism. Volume equals big B times H. This time, big B, though, is the top and the bottom of the cylinder. So we find the area of the circle, and then we just multiply it times the height. So big B in this case, how do we find the area of a circle? Well, big B equals pi times radius squared. So the volume, we could write it out as pi times radius squared times height. All right, let's see what we got. We have a radius of 8 and we've got a height of 12. So the volume of this guy is simply pi times 8 squared times 12, which means volume equals 64 pi times 12. That's 768 pi. And remember, this is feet cubed. Okay, moving on. All right, I'm going to do number 9 for you. All right, because number 9 is one of those work backwards problems. They want you to find the diameter, okay? And what do we know? Well, we know the height is 15 and we know the volume is 735 pi. So again, let's go with volume equals big B times H. But this time, remember, big B is the circle. So it's pi times radius squared times the height, and we know is 15, right? And we were also given the volume, so it's 735 pi equals pi times radius squared times 15. All right, whenever I'm doing one of these work backwards problems with a circle, there will always end up being a pi on both sides, and we can just divide both sides by pi and get rid of those. So this makes it a little easier. 735 equals 15 r squared. We're going to divide both sides by 15, and we end up with 49. 735 divided by 15 is 49. 15 divided by 15 is 1 r squared, or just r squared. I think you can see where this is going. We take the square root of both sides, and we end up with r equals 7. But that's not our answer because they asked us to find the diameter, so the diameter is 14, and it is meters. Okay? I'm going to leave number 10 for you to do. And I'm going to leave 11 for you to do, but I'm going to do 12, which is actually the harder one. Okay, so let's take a look at what we want. They want the volume of this prism, but what we have is a solid prism with a cylinder basically drilled out of the middle. So we're going to call this our base side, and we're basically going to find the volume of the entire prism, and then we're going to subtract the volume of the cylinder. Okay, so let's get started. So this is our face, or our base. So remember, volume equals big B times H. Volume equals length times width, or 10 times 8 times the height of the prism, which is right here, 18. So we have 10 times 8 times 18 for a volume of 1,440, and that is inches cubed. And then we're going to minus the volume of the cylinder, which remember is still, volume still equals big B times H. It's just this time big B is a circle, and that is a diameter of 4. So it's pi times radius, which is 2 squared, times the height is still 18 because it goes all the way through. Okay, so volume equals, not the right little, volume equals 4 pi, 2 squared is 4, times 18. Okay, and 18 times 4 is 72. So we have the volume of the cylinder equals 72 pi. Alright, so our final answer, the volume of the remaining cube, or the prism with the hole drilled out, equals 1,440 minus 72 pi. And that's as far as we can go because we cannot combine these because they are not like terms. But of course this is inches cubed. And there's your answer. Okay.